Chapter 26. Minky looked at the incompetent and furious candidates in front of her, smiled defiantly, then casually took a phone from her chest pocket and dialed a number. Well, it's over. A total of 6 people passed this hunter exam. What do you mean what's not? When I say it's done, that's final. I'm just informing you. As soon as the words fell, a loud crash echoed through the area. Everyone turned toward the source of the noise and saw candidate number 255, the wrestler Tuodu, smashing the cooking table in front of him with a punch. I'm not convinced. I don't want to be a gourmet hunter. Then Tuodu stepped forward, anger in his expression, and walked toward Menki. I want to be a bounty hunter. How can a mere gourmet hunter like you decide our fates? I will never accept this result. I'm not convinced. Minky glanced at Tuodu, her gaze cold and sharp. A gourmet hunter? Yes. That's right. A person who only knows how to cook dares to call herself a hunter. It's laughable. And that guy who passed first, I heard you invited him to be a gourmet hunter, and that's why his whole group passed. People like you who cheat for personal gain, I refuse to accept it. I protest. Reo didn't expect to be dragged into this mess, but he had passed through his own ability. What did it have to do with this sore loser? He was about to walk over and knock some sense into Tuodu when Boara appeared from the side. Boara stood up and calmly walked in Tuodu's direction. Seeing this, Tuodu took a fighting stance, ready to attack Boara. Minky quickly intervened. Wait. Boara, don't get involved in this. Let me handle it. Boara looked at Menki and thought to himself, if I step in, he'll just end up with some broken bones. But if she steps in, he might end up on a dinner plate. Ha! Seeing that Boara had paused, Tuodu launched the first attack and charged at him with a shout. But despite Boara's massive size, he moved with surprising agility. With a simple sidestep, he effortlessly dodged Tuodu's strike. Unfortunately, because Boara dodged, Reo and the others standing behind him were now in the line of fire. They had gathered near the 2 examiners after being announced as qualifiers. Tuodu, seeing his initial attack miss, immediately turned to attack Reo instead. Look out! Reo, dodge, Leorio shouted from the side. Damn, he's too close, it's too late. Kurapika gritted his teeth, eyes fixed on the closing distance. But Reo just grinned as Tuodu barreled toward him. Time to test out this new ability. With a burst of power from his feet, Reo vanished in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already beside Tuodu. Tuodu was completely caught off guard by Rio's speed. He hadn't even had time to react before Reo was already in position. Reo didn't waste time on pleasantries. Clenching his fists, muscles tense, he launched a brutal hook with his right hand straight into Tuodu's chin. Thunk. The punch landed with a solid, dull sound. Still, Tuodu was no ordinary opponent. As a seasoned wrestler, he could take a hit. Arg. Go to hell. Though his eyes rolled back and he briefly lost consciousness, Tuodu quickly recovered. With a roar, he lunged forward, arms outstretched, trying to grapple Reo. But Reo was far too fast. With a swift sidestep, he dodged to the right. Tuodu's hands closed on empty air. Before Tuodu could reset, Reo was already moving in, targeting his temple for a knockout blow. All right. That's enough. Boara suddenly leapt between them, blocking the attack. Tuodu, not only are you attacking another candidate, you're targeting someone who already passed the exam. Reo had already committed to the strike, but managed to stop himself just in time, stepping back reluctantly. Boara made a face and continued firmly. I was the examiner for the second phase of the hunter exam. I have the authority to disqualify you, and now I'm exercising that authority. Tuodu, you're disqualified. Leave the exam grounds immediately. Wait. Boara, stand down. Minky suddenly spoke from the couch nearby. This time, let me handle it. She turned to Reo. Candidate number 406, Reo, what's your take on this? Reo looked at the examiner, then sighed. What choice did he have? He simply nodded. I'll follow the examiner's instructions. Chapter 27. After Reo gave his consent, Menki stood up from the sofa, looked at Tuodu, still blocked by Buara, and said coldly, Candidate 255, let me show you what a real gourmet hunter can do. Keep your eyes wide open, and that goes for the rest of you too. Consider this my parting gift to all of you. With that, Menki grabbed 2 kitchen knives and headed toward the exit. Give me 1 hour. I'll be back with something. She left the venue, her figure vanishing in just a few agile jumps. The clock above the doorway read 1:24 p.m. The examinees rushed to the entrance to catch a glimpse of her, but by then, only the faint outline of her silhouette remained in the distance. Incredible. She just vanished in a flash. One of the candidates shouted in awe. Meanwhile, Satots, perched in a tree outside, sighed to himself. Things are getting more and more unpredictable. But that just makes it all the more interesting. He pulled a phone from his pocket and dialed a number. Hello, this is Satots, the examiner of the first phase of this year's Hunter exam. Please transfer me to the chairman. Something's happened here. Beep. Beep. Hello? Satots? This is Netero. What's going on? Well, I'm sure you've already been briefed about the situation on my end. Things have escalated, and I'm not sure how best to proceed. Yo ho ho tilde. Netero laughed heartily. Well, since something like this has happened, I can't just sit back and relax as chairman of the Hunter Association. Alright, I'll head over by airship and handle it myself. No need to say more. Bye for now. Beep. Beep. Satots slowly lowered the phone, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. He couldn't help but feel that somehow, the chairman was happy? Meanwhile, Reo and the others had descended into the lower corridor. There, the bean-faced man who had handed out the number tags was now standing before an elderly gentleman, none other than Chairman Netero himself. Chairman, do you really need to go in person for something this minor? You've got a meeting scheduled shortly, remember tilde? Netero stroked his beard thoughtfully. Menki is already quite exceptional for someone so young. But given how the situation has unfolded, I believe it's better if I go in person. Besides, dragging an old man like me into meetings all the time. You really have no heart. The bean-faced man wiped sweat from his face, clearly distressed, and tried again. I understand the content of Menki's test. It was designed to assess the candidate's observational skills and creativity through cooking. I'm not sure why things turned out this way. Netero glanced sideways at him. As a rule, I always respect the decisions of my examiners. But this time, the problem doesn't seem to lie solely with the candidates. Even the examiners may share some of the blame. In any case, I've decided, I'm going. Don't try to talk me out of it. With that, Netero walked off, leaving the bean-faced man standing there, speechless. Back at the testing venue. Nearly an hour had passed, but Menki still hadn't returned. Tension was rising. The candidates were growing restless. Even Buara's presence couldn't completely suppress their frustration. Reo and his group leaned against the wall, relaxed. After all, they had already passed the exam. No matter how things played out now, it didn't concern them too much. Chapter 28. Just when the candidates were growing completely impatient, Menki, who had been gone for nearly an hour, finally returned. She stood in the doorway of the venue, hands empty, and called out to the candidates with a cheerful grin. Yo! Sorry to keep you waiting everyone. Tuodu, already frustrated with Menki, couldn't take it anymore. He had waited nearly an hour, and now, seeing her return empty-handed, he immediately exploded. TCH. You said you'd bring us a parting gift, and now you come back with nothing. Menki wasn't fazed in the slightest. She simply smiled, reached into her coat, and pulled out a small bottle. Inside, something horn-like could be seen floating. She held the bottle up and waved it toward Tuodu and the rest of the candidates, signaling that she hadn't returned empty-handed after all. Tuodu squinted at the bottle and asked, confused. "What is that? Is it even food?" Gon stepped forward curiously to get a closer look. These look like scales, but not normal ones." Minky smiled at him. "Didn't expect you to be so sharp, kid." Tuodu, meanwhile, was outraged. After waiting all that time, all she brought back was a tiny bottle of scales. He scoffed. "You've gotta be kidding me. What kind of food could you possibly make with scales? That's ridiculous." Minky shot him a disdainful look but said nothing. She walked over to the nearest cooking station. Carefully, she opened the bottle and poured some of the contents onto the cutting board. Then she washed a kitchen knife, and with precise motions, she began slicing the scales into fine powder. Next, she took some of the plain white rice the candidates had used earlier for sushi, plated it neatly, and sprinkled the powdered scales on top. Once finished, she turned to the group with a satisfied expression. "All right. A top-tier dish is ready. Candidate number 255, Tuodu, step up and taste it. This is something you couldn't buy even with money." Tuodu's face turned green. He stomped over to Menki, knocked the plate of rice aside, and roared. "Who wants to eat your scaly rice? Asking me to eat that is an insult." Reo, watching the scene unfold, was quietly delighted. He'd actually been curious to try the scaly rice, and now it had just been flung in his direction. He caught the plate midair without spilling a single grain. Then he calmly grabbed a spoon from a nearby counter, scooped a bite, and tasted it. Reo closed his eyes and chewed slowly. Though made with scale powder, the texture was smooth and chewy, adding a unique bite to the soft, sticky rice. There was something oddly familiar about the flavor. He had it before. But where? He took another bite, savoring it. Suddenly, his eyes flew open. Seaweed bento. He remembered now, he'd tasted this exact flavor in a seaweed bento from a Japanese meal once. That was it. Gulp. The other candidates, seeing Reo close his eyes while eating, assumed it was amazing. They all swallowed hard. And now, seeing him open his eyes so suddenly, clearly shocked, they grew even more eager. In their minds, one thought echoed. Could it be? Is this scaly rice actually delicious? Reo, always impatient, couldn't take it anymore. He walked up quickly and asked. Reo, what's the deal? Is the scaly rice really that good? Hey! Say something already. The rest of the candidates now turned to Reo, waiting eagerly for his verdict. Chapter 29. Reo took out a tissue and wiped his mouth. After glancing around, he ignored Reo and turned to Menki instead. Well, about this horn scale rice. The scales were originally a bit tough, but after you ground them into powder, that hardness turned into texture. It's no longer difficult to chew. When you mix that scale powder into the rice, it adds just the right amount of bite to the soft grains. It really elevates the dish. Also, I noticed some changes in my body after eating it. If I had to point out a flaw, I'd say the rice isn't worthy of those scales. After speaking, Reo set the plate down and slid it toward Gon and the others, signaling them to try it. Gon and Reo had been waiting impatiently. Seeing Reo leave more than half untouched, they eagerly grabbed spoons and dug in. Minky glanced at them but wasn't particularly concerned. Instead, she looked at Reo with satisfaction. I knew I wasn't wrong about you. You're real gourmet hunter material. You figured out the secret of the horn scale right away. Though that's not something you should fully understand yet. You'll know more once you pass the official assessment and become a full-fledged hunter. She then turned to face the rest of the candidates and began to explain. That scale you saw earlier came from a horned bear. They only live deep in the Raoul wetlands, in the Humelo region. There are very few horned bears left in the world. They're incredibly rare. Minky was in a good mood and happily shared more details. However, most of the candidates weren't as thrilled. They thought the scaly rice tasted decent, but in the end, it was just rice with an added crunch. Their excitement quickly faded. With the realization that only 6 people had passed the second phase, the rest of the candidates returned their focus to the hunter exam. Reo, having just finished his portion, suddenly put 2 and 2 together. Wait, does that mean you went all the way into the Raoul wetlands and back in under an hour just to get that scale? Kurapika, standing nearby, nodded in amazement. That's incredible. I wouldn't even know how to get in there. Minky grinned proudly, sprawled out again on the sofa. Well, now you understand how capable gourmet hunters really are. Tuodu clenched his fists, glaring at Minky with growing frustration. He couldn't hold it in anymore. With a shout, he kicked over the table in front of him. I don't care if horned scale powder is some rare delicacy. In my opinion, food only needs to fill your stomach. He paused, then jabbed a finger at Minky. Failing people just because of some food? That's ridiculous. You're not a hunter, you're just a foodie. Minky stared at him with a blank expression. But everyone could feel it, she was furious. You idiot. Haven't you figured it out yet? The fact that I went to the Raoul wetlands and came back in under an hour, that alone proves my strength. Whether it's gourmet hunters or bounty hunters, all of us passed the hunter exam with our own skills before choosing our specialty. You're just a candidate in the preliminary exam. Who are you to question my qualifications? Fine. If you people won't appreciate the value of this trial, then it ends here. The 6 who passed, follow me. We're moving on to the next phase. With that, Minky turned and began walking toward the exit. Reo and the others exchanged glances, then silently followed her outside. Damn it, don't think you're leaving that easily. Tuodu charged forward, attempting to block Minky's path. But before he could reach her, Boara struck him with a palm to the chest, sending him flying into the wall. Then Boara positioned himself at the doorway, casting a sharp gaze over the remaining candidates. In an instant, the room turned ice-cold. Minky looked back at the unqualified group. That's all I have to say. If you want me to reverse your disqualification, bring the chairman of the Hunter Association here in person. As soon as she finished speaking, a noise sounded behind her. Chapter 30. Minky turned around and saw who had spoken. It was Satats, the examiner from the first phase. His mouth twitched slightly, and his eyebrows rose. Minky, you should stop here. I've already informed the Hunter Association about what's happening. They'll handle it from here. Of course, as the examiner for the first test, I don't have authority over the second phase. I'm just offering you a friendly reminder. Minky cut him off bluntly. Then don't interfere. The second phase of the Hunter exam is meant to test observation and imagination. I gave them so many clues, and yet only a handful passed. These 6 were the only ones who demonstrated enough insight. At the end of the day, it comes down to whether they had the courage to face the unknown. Let me make this clear, this decision won't be changed unless the chairman himself steps in. Just as she finished speaking, a voice echoed from above. Even so, don't you think your standard for passing is a bit too strict? Everyone froze, stunned. The voice clearly came from the sky. They rushed outside the venue and looked up. An airship floated above them, and from it, a small black dot was falling toward the ground. Huh? A jump? The dot landed with a powerful thud, kicking up a massive cloud of dust that rippled through the area like shockwaves. A moment later, the dust cleared, and an old man stood there. He had a ponytail, elongated ears, and wore a pair of traditional clogs. Minky stared at him in disbelief. Could it be chairman? The candidates around her echoed in shock. The chairman? Gon looked between the airship in the sky and the old man before them, mouth wide open. Whoa! Jumping from that height is amazing. Killua chimed in. Yeah. What is he, spring-loaded or something? Only Reo narrowed his eyes slightly. He had noticed the old man's legs tremble a bit upon landing. But still, surviving a fall like that without injury, this man was definitely something else. Meanwhile, Menki, realizing who stood before her, quickly straightened up and spoke respectfully. I'm sorry I didn't greet you sooner, Chairman Netero. The candidates around her looked puzzled upon hearing the name. Satots stepped forward and introduced him. This is Chairman Netero, head of the Hunter Association and the Hunter Exam Review Committee. The person with the highest authority in the entire Hunter exam. Understanding dawned across the group. Whoa, that's incredible, Dawn exclaimed. No wonder, Killua added. Satots approached Netero, bowed, and stepped aside. Netero chuckled. Well, I'm technically the one overseeing the exam, but I usually stick to behind-the-scenes work. I only step in personally when a conflict arises. He turned to Menki with a warm smile. Now then, Menki. She immediately stood at attention. Yes, sir. Leorio nudged Kurapika and whispered. Hard to believe, look how tense that tigress got. Kurapika nodded. That just shows how important this guy is. While they whispered, Netero continued. For the second half of the second phase, you said your goal was to test whether the candidates had the courage to face the unknown, right? And that's why you set a cooking challenge? Menki nodded. Yes, that's correct. I wanted a challenge that tested both inner and outer qualities. So I originally planned to create a very difficult dish to divide the field. Netero's eyes sparkled. Originally? What does that mean? In the end, only 6 candidates passed. Are you saying you believe the others weren't up to the challenge? Menki looked a little awkward but answered truthfully. No. It was the candidates' dismissive attitude toward cooking that made me angry. I let it affect my judgment. Then one of the candidates figured out how to make proper sushi, and word spread. After that, most of their attempts were subpar. And honestly, I was already full, so... Netero interrupted with a raised hand. So what you're saying is, you also believe the way you handled the exam was unfair? Menki sighed and nodded. Yes. When it comes to anything involving food, I sometimes lose my objectivity. She bowed deeply. I'm truly sorry. I'm not fit to be an examiner. But Netero just smiled. If anything, that just proves your passion for cooking. In that case, let's redo the evaluation. But I'd like you to stay on and continue overseeing the test. There's just one condition. For the new challenge, you must participate alongside the candidates to demonstrate how it's done, as an example. What do you think? Menki considered it, then nodded. That sounds fair. But Chairman, the 6 candidates who already passed my test, Reo and the others, they shouldn't have to take it again. Reo and his group hadn't expected what came next. Netero shook his finger and said with a grin. Nope. The test is invalid. All 6 of you will retake the assessment. But... Reo frowned. This old man. But what? Gon asked curiously. But, Netero continued, the Hunter Association will provide a little compensation for the 6 of you. Really? Awesome. Gon cheered, clearly not thinking about what the challenge might involve. Reo raised an eyebrow. He already knew what the retest would be, so he wasn't too concerned. Kurapika and the others had hoped to cruise through without further effort, but seeing Reo remain calm, they resigned themselves and followed suit. Soon after, Menki selected a new test. Reo and the others, along with the rest of the group, boarded the airship that had brought the chairman and headed off toward the new exam site. Chapter 31. The airship flew for a while before landing atop a high mountain. Reo disembarked along with the other candidates. Once everyone had gotten off, Menki stepped forward to announce the contents of the retest. She walked to the edge of a steep ravine and pointed down as she explained. This valley is home to a large number of grape spiders. These spiders wrap their eggs in the threads they spin. For this retest, your task is to descend into the valley, retrieve a grape spider egg, and then climb back up to boil it. If you succeed, you pass. If you fail, well, that depends on your luck. Alright. I'll give a demonstration so you can see how it's done. With that, Menki leapt gracefully into the valley. A moment later, she returned, clutching a grape spider egg in hand. Back on solid ground, she gave a final warning. Be careful. The water below moves extremely fast. If you fall in, you'll be swept out to sea within minutes, and there's no saving you then. Reo stepped forward, gave the ravine a quick look, and jumped down without hesitation. Gon and Kurapika followed right after. The other examinees hesitated, exchanging nervous glances. No one else dared to move. Menki raised an eyebrow. What about the rest of you? Are you giving up? Netero, standing nearby, added gently, sometimes, it also takes courage to walk away. And the hunter exam isn't just held once. Hearing that, Tuodu clenched his fists. I'm going too. With that, he ran to the ravine and jumped. Down below, Reo, Gon, and Kurapika were hanging from threads of grape spider silk, waiting for the next gust of wind. Suddenly, Gon shouted, now! He and Reo released the silk and dove downward. Reo snatched a grape spider egg mid-fall, just as the wind caught him to lift him back up. But before he could celebrate, something slammed into him. It was Tuodu, dropping in hard and fast. Hey! That grape spider egg is mine, Tuodu shouted. Caught off guard, Reo lost his grip, and Tuodu swiped the egg from his hands. Damn it! Reo was now falling. Just as he panicked, a fishing hook flew through the air and wrapped around him, halting his descent. He looked up and saw Gon had cast the line. But that wasn't enough, Reo needed to grab another grape spider egg or he would fail the test. And the wind that could carry him back up was already starting to rise. Reo looked around and spotted another cluster of eggs 3 or 4 meters away. Dangling in midair, he began to sway side to side. Perfect. Using the momentum, he swung harder and harder toward the eggs. He was getting close, but so was the wind. Reo extended a hand, reaching. Whoosh! Damn it, the wind's coming. Gritting his teeth, Reo yanked the fishing line free, grabbed it, and flung himself toward the cluster with his right arm. Got it. Just as his hand closed around another egg, the wind surged upward, carrying him, and the egg, safely back to the top. As Reo landed, Gon, Leorio, and Kurapika stared at him in surprise. Reo waved, signaling that he was fine, then turned to go on with gratitude. Thanks, Gon. If it weren't for you, I would have fallen into the river. I wouldn't have died, but I definitely would have failed. Gon rubbed the back of his head, smiling sheepishly. No problem. Menki, standing nearby, breathed a sigh of relief seeing Reo make it back safely. All right, now that the last candidate has returned, let's move on to the next part of the retest, boiling the eggs. Che. Reo grumbled, his right hand subtly tensing. He had been planning to deal with Tuodu for stealing his first egg, but now he had to let it go. He loosened his grip and walked over to join the others. Reo and the rest gathered around a large iron pot, waiting for the grape spider eggs inside to cook. Originally, Reo thought they might rely on Boara like in the original test, but this time Boara had been called away by Netero and was nowhere to be found. That meant they had to figure it out themselves. Reo watched the eggs closely. As one began to float to the surface, he grabbed a net and scooped it out. Seeing this, the other candidates followed suit. Menki smiled approvingly, then stepped forward and held up a normal egg and a boiled grape spider egg to show the difference. I now declare the second phase of the hunter exam complete. The number of successful candidates, 44. Because Reo and Tuodu had both passed this time, the number was 2 more than in the original tally, but it made little difference overall. Those who had failed stood off to the side, disappointed. For them, the next step was boarding the return bus. Thus concluded the second trial of the Hunter exam. Chapter 32. Earn. The pollution in this world was far less severe than in Rio's previous life, especially this close to the national parks. As a result, the night sky was brilliantly clear, and the stars shone brightly. An airship floated silently through the clouds. On board were Reo and the 44 other candidates, heading to the next exam site. Shortly after boarding, Reo, Gon, and the other candidates were summoned to the hall by Menki's announcement. "I'd like to congratulate all the candidates here. You've worked hard. All 44 of you have successfully passed the second phase of the Hunter exam. The destination for the next phase is scheduled to be reached tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Once Menki finished the announcement, the candidates responded with a mix of expressions, some nervous, some excited, some anxious. Chairman Netero watched them, stroking his beard with a chuckle. Such a lovely atmosphere. Everyone's face tells a different story. Unlike the laid-back chairman, the bean-faced man beside him looked worried. He glanced at his watch, then tugged gently at the chairman's sleeve. "Chairman Netero, it's already quite late. If you don't return soon, you'll miss the regular council meeting." Netero waved him off, still stroking his beard. "Oh, that little meeting. Just find someone to fill in for me when the time comes." The two bickered lightheartedly over the routine meeting. Ahem. Menki coughed twice, attempting to restore some dignity to the Hunter Association amid their antics. Then she turned to the candidates. "You're free until the next assembly. Use the time to rest or prepare." Relieved, the exhausted candidates quickly dispersed to find somewhere to relax. Just as Reo, Gon, and the others were about to leave, Chairman Netero stopped them, along with Lena. The group followed him to a private room. "Make yourselves at home. Sit down, Netero said warmly as they entered. "Well, I'm sure you already know why I've called the 6 of you here." Reo and the others nodded. They were the 6 who had passed Menki's original sushi challenge before the retest, and this clearly had to do with the compensation Netero had mentioned. "Great. Since you already know, I won't beat around the bush. This is compensation for having to redo the second exam. Of course, compensation has its limits. I can't approve anything, but feel free to make reasonable requests." The group exchanged surprised looks. They hadn't expected Netero to be so casual about it. Reo stepped forward first. Since arriving in this world, he'd been fighting barehanded. After numerous battles, he realized that the physical strength of both humans and beasts here far exceeded what he'd known in his previous life. He needed a weapon to support him. "Chairman, I'd like to request a weapon, something reliable for combat. Would that be possible?" Netero chuckled. "No problem at all. However, there aren't many weapons available on the airship right now, and those that are pretty basic. Once you either pass or fail the Hunter exam, you can come to the Hunter Association and choose one yourself." Satisfied, Reo nodded and stepped back. Next was Gon. "I'd like information about my father. Is that allowed?" Netero paused thoughtfully before answering. "No can do. Jing's personal information is protected. Only he can access it. However, I can give you a handwritten account of his exploits before he became a hunter." Gon had braced for disappointment, so even that much made him smile with gratitude. Kurapika requested information on the Phantom Troop. Netero obliged by printing a copy on the spot. Leorio asked for books on medicine, and Netero approved it with the same conditions as Reo. He could collect them after the exam. Killua requested some chocolate, to which Netero laughed and promised to give it to him once they arrived at the next exam site the following day. Finally, Lena made her request, for explosives. Netero paused, then instructed someone to bring her a limited supply. With that, the matter of compensation for the 6 early qualifiers came to an end. "Hey hunters! Just a quick break. Hopefully you're enjoying this fanfic. Let's keep going. Chapter 33. After Reo and the others left Chairman Netero's room, their moods were visibly lighter. After all, the president had more or less agreed to all their requests. Not long after, Killua and Gon suggested going on an expedition around the airship, but Reo, Kurapika, and the others weren't interested, so they declined. In the end, Killua and Gon went off on their own adventure. Reo and Lena decided to find something to eat, while Leorio and Kurapika headed off in search of a place to rest. Reo had initially planned to eat alone, but since Lena was also going, the two of them teamed up to look for a dining area. After wandering for a while, they finally found a place that looked like it served food. Several other candidates had already gathered there, but since everyone was technically a rival, the atmosphere felt tense. As Reo and Lena walked in, all eyes turned toward them. Reo noticed the stares and immediately glared back. He was used to this kind of tension from his underground fighting days. He knew the type, people who preyed on the weak and backed down the moment they sensed strength. Sure enough, the moment Rio's fierce gaze swept across the room, the other candidates quickly averted their eyes. He and Lena walked to the bar and placed their orders. With food in hand, they brought their trays over to a table they had picked earlier. Just as they sat down, Reo noticed Gon and Killua approaching the restaurant. He was about to wave them over but stopped when he saw Killua looking unusually withdrawn. Reo thought better of it and put his hand down. Lena noticed and asked curiously, "What's wrong, Reo? Something up?" Reo smiled and waved it off. "It's nothing. Let's just eat. The steak here's not bad, you should have ordered one too." Lena, sitting across from him, let out a light, bell-like laugh. Hee as a girl, I can't eat something that heavy at night. I went with pasta instead." Reo couldn't quite understand girl logic. "Just pasta? Can that even fill you up?" He was about to say something when a sudden commotion caught his attention. He glanced over and saw something happening at Gon and Killua's table. Killua and Gon were seated in a booth with a black-haired girl sitting beside them. Leorio had his hand on the girl's shoulder, and Kurapika was speaking seriously. Reo recalled this part of the story. It was about the girl whose father had gotten involved in drug trafficking and was eventually targeted for assassination by the Zoldyck family. The girl herself didn't know any of that yet. He picked up his glass of water, took a sip, and kept watching with interest. "Oh, here it comes," Killua said something, and now the girl's mad. She flipped the table in front of Gon and Killua, then lunged at Killua. Nice. Killua dodged, but she struck again. Oof, too bad. Her attack was intercepted by Chairman Netero, who stepped in just in time. With a few calmly spoken words, he completely diffused her anger. "You care about that girl." Reo was so caught up in the scene that Lena's voice startled him. "Crap, I got too into it and forgot she was here. If she hits me right now." He turned his head sharply. "Wah." The softness brushing his mouth froze him on the spot, as Lena's face loomed closer in his vision. "Ah, sorry. Sorry." Reo blushed furiously, stammering out an apology. He was 18, and this was the first time he'd been in such close contact with a girl. Naturally, he was a bit flustered. But to his surprise, Lena just smiled, completely unfazed. "It's fine. I'm done eating anyway, it's about time to rest. Tomorrow's going to be another tough exam." With that, Lena gave a little wave and hurried off. What Reo didn't see was the soft blush that colored her cheeks once she turned around. Chapter 34. After dinner, Reo started feeling a bit tired. Although the day's 2 tests hadn't drained him physically, there was still some mental fatigue. Deciding to rest for a while, Reo turned to find a place to sleep, only to discover the hall was already filled with sleeping candidates. There wasn't a single spot left. With a sigh, he turned away and began looking elsewhere for an empty room. "Yo Leorio, Kurapika. It's late, Don't tell me you're still up to something? Rounding a corner of the airship, Reo spotted Leorio and Kurapika standing at the door of a room, about to knock. Leorio's hand froze in midair as he turned toward Rio's voice. "Oh, Reo. We were just about to speak with one of the examiners. You might not know this, but someone snuck onto the ship, an intruder. It seems to be connected to Killua's family. The chairman took care of it, but Kurapika and I thought we might ask for a favor." "The girl you're talking about, I think I know who she is," Reo replied, recalling the scene from earlier at the restaurant. They probably hadn't noticed him at the time. Leorio raised his eyebrows, surprised. "What? You know her? We only just ran into her during dinner." Reo shrugged. "I was eating with Lena in the dining area earlier. I happened to see the commotion. As for the girl..." He paused, then continued. "I noticed from her earrings, her family seems to be involved in the processed mineral business. Specifically, the refined variety of spicy fragrant mountain ore." At the mention of that, Kurapika's expression changed, as if something had clicked. But before he could speak, Leorio interrupted. "What? Spicy mountain ore? That's some kind of metal, right? Must be a gold mine. No wonder someone would try to have her family assassinated, probably out of jealousy." Reo shot Leorio a look and shook his head. Leorio's got a good heart, but he really needs to stop interrupting people. "This refined ore isn't metal, it's addictive," Reo explained. "It has similar effects to narcotics. You study medicine, right? You should know how dangerous that kind of substance is. And her earrings? Definitely high grade. That kind of accessory isn't worn casually." Kurapika nodded solemnly. "That type of refined ore, just a taste is enough to hook someone. It's a banned substance worldwide." Leorio closed his eyes, thinking deeply. "Now that you mention it. Yeah, I remember hearing about people going bankrupt trying to get more of it. And if someone hired the Zulks to take out her father, maybe it wasn't about business rivalry. It might have been revenge." Leorio looked pained. He hadn't expected the girl he was about to speak up for to be part of something so dark. Snap. Just as Leorio and Kurapika were about to knock, the door swung open. "You three. Lurking outside my door in the middle of the night, are you trying to peek on your examiner while she's showering?" Reo looked up and saw Menki standing in the doorway, wrapped only in a towel, hair still damp. One hand rested on the doorframe, and her glare could have set them on fire. "And you, Reo? I thought you were a promising gourmet hunter candidate. Didn't expect you to stoop to peeping." She turned sharply toward Reo, clearly furious. Reo panicked. "What? No. I didn't. Don't go making stuff up. Look. I'm way over here. I was just passing by and ran into these two. I asked what they were up to. If anyone's guilty, it's them." Menki glanced at him, then at the distance between him and her door. Her expression softened slightly. He was far enough away that it made sense. "Humph. Then it's you two who are the perverts. Trying to peep on me, huh? Take this." With a snarl, she whipped a kitchen knife from her chest, where she'd been hiding it, no one dared to ask, and charged after Leorio and Kurapika. Reo watched Kurapika try to protest while Menki chased them down the corridor, knife in hand. He sighed and offered a silent prayer. "Good luck out there. Nyan yo." Chapter 35. The next day, aboard the airship. Poof. Reo looked over at the two bruised faces beside him and couldn't help but laugh. Leorio and Kurapika both turned red with frustration. "Damn it, Reo. Couldn't you have warned us yesterday? You really had to sit back and enjoy watching us get beaten up. You jerk." Leorio stood up, grabbed Reo by the collar, and shouted right in his face. "Hey, come on, you two didn't suffer that much. Besides, isn't there a saying, scars are a man's badge of honor? If you think of it that way, doesn't it feel a bit more meaningful?" Reo, unbothered, reached up and calmly pushed Leorio's head back, while kindly offering what he considered a better perspective. Just as Leorio backed off, Kurapika stormed in. "Reo. I didn't think you'd say something so insensitive. Whether or not I become a hunter, if people hear about this, Leorio might be able to shrug it off, but me? How am I supposed to live with this shame? Being injured because of peeping. That's not a badge of honor, it's humiliating." Reo smiled and gently pushed Kurapika back. All right. It's not the end of the world. And hey, you just admitted to peeping yourself, we're all guys here. I get it." Kurapika opened his mouth to retort, but Leorio, still fuming, beat him to it. "What the hell does that mean? Not easy to say. Are you implying I'm fine living with the shame of being a peeping Tom? Don't underestimate me, Kurapika." Kurapika turned to glare at Leorio, a vein popping on his forehead. The two immediately launched into another heated argument. Damn it. If you hadn't tried to beg the examiner yesterday, none of this would have happened. Reo watched them go at it again, sighed, and walked off silently. Dusts off his clothes. Not a single leaf clings to me. He decided to grab some breakfast while there was still time. But just as he reached the dining area, something caught his eye, a notice board. Before he could read it, a clear chime echoed across the airship. Immediately afterward, the voice of the bean-faced man came through the speaker system. "Good morning, everyone. Apologies for the long wait, our airship is about to arrive at its destination." Hearing this, Reo quickly moved to the bar, bought a few loaves of bread, and stuffed them into his bag. Just in case the next test didn't offer any food. After paying 5,000 rings, he stepped aside and walked toward the nearest window. Through it, he saw a massive cylindrical structure perched atop a sprawling mountain range. "That must be the next test site," he murmured. "We got here faster than I expected." The airship landed smoothly atop the cylinder-shaped building. Once it touched down, Reo disembarked with the rest of the candidates. As the group gathered, the bean-faced man, standing near the airship, cleared his throat loudly to get their attention. "Ahem. Good work, everyone. You've arrived at the top of the trap tower, which will serve as the venue for the third phase of the hunter exam. Now, I'll explain the rules. It's simple, make it to the ground alive. You have 72 hours to complete this challenge. And with that, the third phase of the hunter exam begins. I wish you all the best of luck." With his announcement complete, the bean-faced man and Chairman Netero boarded the airship once more and departed. Chapter 36. The next day, atop the trap tower, Reo and the other examinees watched as the airship slowly flew away, its engines humming in the distance. Almost immediately, the candidates began trying to figure out how to descend from the top of the tower to the ground below. Reo and the others walked to the edge of the tower and looked down. For a long moment, no one said a word. Leorio swallowed hard at the dizzying height and muttered, "This has to be at least a few hundred meters." Kurapika stood beside him and added, "I think it's even higher. Look at this tower. It's completely smooth, no windows, no ledges, not even an entrance. There's no obvious way down." While the group stood puzzled, a man in athletic wear stepped forward confidently. "It's true, ordinary people wouldn't make it down." He approached the edge and peered over, then began climbing down. But for a top-tier climbing expert, this kind of descent is nothing. Gon and Killua watched him go with wide-eyed amazement. "Whoa, that's amazing. He's actually climbing straight down." But just as the man made progress, a strange sound filled the air. Everyone looked up in confusion, and then they saw them. A group of bizarre creatures was flying toward the man. They had huge wings, but their bodies looked like infant humans. The combination was eerie and unnatural. One of the creatures swooped in, ignored the climber's screams, grabbed him with its talons, and flew back the way it came. "Help! Someone help me!" The man cried, his voice fading into the distance. His helpless scream left the rest of the candidates even more anxious. "Well, looks like climbing's not gonna cut it," Reo remarked calmly. Gon turned to the others. "We'll have to think of something else." "You don't say." Leorio growled, glaring at him. "We all figured that out already." Reo shook his head, half amused, half annoyed at how quickly the group got sidetracked. While they bickered, more and more candidates began disappearing from the rooftop. Reo noticed that Lena was nowhere to be seen. She must have already found the secret passage down. Not wanting to fall behind, Reo interrupted the others. "All right, enough fooling around. A lot of people have already found hidden entrances to go down the tower. We need to start looking too." Though Reo had said it to the group, it was really meant for Gon. He remembered from the original that Gon would be the one to discover the secret doors, so he was nudging him in the right direction. Kurapika looked around and confirmed that several candidates had indeed vanished. "Rio's right. Let's split up and search. There's likely a hidden hatch or door somewhere on this platform. If anyone finds something, don't go down right away, we'll regroup first." Everyone agreed and scattered across the rooftop. Though Reo had prompted Gon to find the door, he had to make it look natural, so he wandered casually, pretending to search. Before long, he heard Gon call out, "Killua! Reo! Leorio! Kurapika! Over here!" Reo smiled. Right on cue. He and the others rushed over to Gon's side. "What is it, Gon? Did you find something?" Leorio asked, curious. Gon nodded enthusiastically. "There's a hidden hatch right here, it leads down." He crouched and pointed to a panel on the floor. "Great. Let's go before someone else beats us to it," Leorio said, clearly eager. But Kurapika threw cold water on the excitement. "Wait. There could be multiple paths beneath these doors. If each one leads somewhere different, we might get separated, or worse." Leorio hesitated. "Do we really have time to overthink it? What if this hatch isn't big enough for all of us?" Gon quickly chimed in. "It's okay. I found 6 secret hatches in total, we've got more than enough." That calmed Leorio down, and he shifted into planning mode. If there are 6 of them so close together, it's possible some might be traps. Kurapika nodded. "It's a gamble. We'll have to rely on luck." Reo, listening to them debate, finally spoke up. "In that case, let's stop wasting time and go. Either way, we don't have much time to decide." The others agreed. They gathered at the hatches, ready to jump. "Let's count down together and jump at the same time. 3. Kurapika took a deep breath. "Well, goodbye for now, everyone." 2. Leorio added, "Let's meet up again at the bottom." 1. Go. Chapter 37. Reo and the others reunited almost instantly after their brief separation. They looked around at each other, surprised by how quickly they'd reconnected. "What a short separation," Kurapika said, glancing at Leorio with a smirk. Reo landed and immediately began scanning the area. He recognized it, this was the platform from the original exam. He turned and spotted something written on a wall. "Hey! Everyone, come look at this," he called out. Gon approached and instinctively read the inscription aloud. "The 5 of you must follow majority rule and clear each stage from here to the goal." Reo reached down and mimicked placing a timer on his wrist. The others understood and followed suit. As soon as all 5 timers were activated, a voice echoed through the room. "Lucky you, exactly 5 people. If it weren't, you might have been stuck in here until the end of the exam." "Who's there?" Leorio snapped, spinning around. He quickly noticed a speaker horn mounted on the wall. "My name is reborn. I'm the warden here, and also the examiner for this stage of the Hunter exam," the voice continued. "This trap tower has multiple pathways, each with different challenges. You've entered the route governed by majority rule. It's one of the hardest paths, requiring full cooperation to succeed. Best of luck. With that, the voice faded. Ka-chunk. Ka-chunk. The wall beside them rumbled open, revealing a large door with text displayed. Circle equals open. X equals remains closed. The group exchanged glances and each pressed the circle button on their wrist devices. Ka-chunk. Ka-chunk. The massive door opened, and the 5 of them stepped through. A few steps in, they arrived at a narrow corridor, flanked by high fences on both sides. A large screen overhead displayed the message. Circle, right, X, left. Everyone pressed their buttons again. The screen revealed the result, 3 circles, 2 X's. Wait, why right? Reo asked. Wouldn't most people go left? Kurapika gently pushed him toward the right-hand path, calmly explaining as they walked. Actually, human behavior studies show that when people face 2 choices and are unsure which to take, they instinctively choose the left. So placing the real path on the right counters that bias. Killua nodded. Yeah, I've heard about that too. Reo frowned. Okay, so what did everyone choose? Reo, walking up front, responded casually, I picked right. Reo turned to Gon. Gon, that means you and I are the simple-minded ones, huh? Gon, sweating nervously, pointed at himself and mumbled, so. I really am on Reo's level. They all laughed lightly and moved on. Soon, they reached a circular arena. The only light came from torches at the 4 corners. On the opposite side, across a deep abyss, stood 5 cloaked figures, hands bound in cuffs. As Reo and the others approached, the figures raised their heads. They've arrived, one said. The figures' cuffs fell to the ground on their own, and he removed his cloak to reveal a bald, heavily built man. To pass this stage, you must face us in combat, he announced. Gon stared at the man. He looks really strong. Reo smiled to himself but said nothing. Gon still didn't realize how much stronger he'd become compared to most candidates. The bald man continued. We're inmates imprisoned here in the trap tower, and we've been formally commissioned by the exam committee as temporary hunter examiners. You'll be competing against us. This stage is one-on-one. Each of you can only fight once. Since your group is governed by majority rule, you just need to win 3 matches to advance. There are no restrictions on how you fight. There's no such thing as a draw. As long as one side admits defeat, the match ends in victory. Now, do you accept the challenge? Reo grumbled, majority rule again, huh? Reo responded with a shrug, it's fine. We'll all vote yes anyway. Just then, the examiner's voice echoed once more through the speaker system. Chapter 38. The examiner's voice suddenly came through the loudspeaker. This duel isn't as simple as you think according to the contract we signed with the prisoners. For every hour they can stall you here, their sentence gets reduced by a year. So their main goal is to waste your time. Kurapika's eyes narrowed in understanding. So we have to reach the goal within the time limit. That means every second counts in this phase. Reo nodded, his tone calm and direct. In that case, let's not waste time, let's deal with these prisoners quickly. Gon agreed enthusiastically. Yeah, Rio's right. Let's finish them fast. If we don't, we'll run out of time. They all pressed the circle on their wrist timers to accept the challenge. The bald man on the other side, clearly the leader, grinned. I'll go first. You can decide who'll face me. The group glanced at one another, unsure who should start. After a moment, Gon stepped forward with a spark of curiosity in his eyes. I'll take the first match. He looks interesting. Reo and Kurapika seemed ready to argue, but after recalling the raw power Gon showed during the incident with Menki, they decided to trust him. Reo and Killua knew Gon's strength well and agreed without hesitation. With that, the first match began. A large holographic display lit up above them. Prisoner, Bat, play button emoji, versus, play button emoji, candidate, Gon. Two narrow stone bridges extended out over the abyss, connecting the arena to both sides. Bat and Gon walked across and entered the ring. The bald prisoner, Bat, looked Gon up and down with a sneer. "You're just a kid. Let's not go all out. How about this? First one to knock the other unconscious wins." Gon, who disliked unnecessary violence, immediately brightened. "Sure. Sounds good." With the rules set, the match officially began. Bat rushed forward in a wide stance, swinging his arms dramatically, trying to intimidate Gon. But Gon's speed was on another level. In a flash, he darted to the side, easily avoiding Bat's charge. Then he dashed behind the bulky man and swung his trusty fishing rod toward the back of Bat's head. Whoosh! But Bat reacted just in time, ducking and rolling across the ground. He narrowly dodged the blow. Gon didn't pursue. Instead, he stepped back to regain distance. Bat scrambled to his feet and, perhaps out of frustration, slammed a fist into the ground where Gon had been moments earlier. Boom! Dust exploded into the air, obscuring the ring. Gon narrowed his eyes, then closed them completely, sharpening his senses. He tilted his head slightly, listening. Tap. Tap. A faint sound to his left. "Hey!" Gon smirked and silently crept to the right instead, using the dust cover to flank Bat. Meanwhile, Bat circled to Gon's previous position, only to find it empty. He whipped his head around in confusion. The dust slowly began to settle. Still unable to locate Gon, Bat glanced over toward his fellow prisoners for help. "Behind you." "He's behind you," someone shouted. Bat spun around, but Gon had moved with him, staying perfectly out of sight. From a distance, Reo and the others burst out laughing. "PFFFT. This guy looks so intimidating, but he's totally getting played." Leorio cackled. "I didn't think Gon would pull something like that, but he's doing great," Kurapika added. Reo smiled faintly, watching Gon toy with Bat. Still, he gave a quick reminder. "All right, Gon, that's enough playing around. We're still in the middle of the exam, remember? If you waste too much time, you're just helping them." Gon nodded from the arena. "Got it." He dropped the act, stepped back, and gripped his fishing rod. With one swift movement, he struck Bat clean across the head. Thunk. Bat collapsed, completely unconscious, still looking confused even as he hit the ground. Chapter 39. After Bat collapsed, a new prisoner stepped forward from the other side. His name was Bluff. He approached Bat, checked his condition, and confirmed that he was unconscious before officially declaring. "The first match goes to candidate Gon." Bluff then dragged the unconscious Bat back to the prisoner area. By the time he returned, a thin, sharp-eyed man had stepped forward, ready for the next match. Seeing the second opponent, Leorio's eyes lit up with determination. "This one's mine. Don't worry, everyone, I'll take him down." Reo and the others didn't object, so Leorio confidently stepped into the ring. Soon, he and the thin man stood opposite each other in the arena. The thin man gave a sly smile. "You can probably tell I'm not exactly the athletic type. So how about this, we don't resort to violence?" Leorio, relieved to hear it, nodded. That was perfectly fine with him. The man then pulled two candles, one long, one short, from his pocket. "These aren't explosives or anything, just ordinary candles. I'll light both at the same time. We'll each hold one. Whichever candle burns out first, that person loses. Simple, right?" Leorio thought it over. It seemed harmless enough. "All right," he agreed. The thin man grinned wider. "Choose one. If you want the long candle, press circle on your timer. For the short one, press X." Leorio hesitated, weighing his options. Then made up his mind. "I'll take the long one." He pressed circle on his wrist timer. Then, turning back to his friends, he shouted, "Hey! Vote circle for me." I'm going with the long candle. The results showed 5 circles, 0 X's. The man tossed the long candle to Leorio. Whoa. Whoa. Leorio fumbled with the catch, nearly dropping it. Reo and the other sighed from the sidelines. If he can't even catch a candle. The 2 men moved to the torch-lit corners of the ring and lit their respective candles. Leorio relaxed as the flame on his long candle burned gently. But just moments later, the flame flared wildly and began burning at an alarming speed. Half the candle was gone in under a minute. Reo and the others watched nervously from the sidelines. Reo understood the trick. Blowing out the opponent's candle would be the easiest win. But if he shouted that aloud, the prisoner would catch on. So, Reo changed position, quietly stepping behind Leorio, making sure he was hidden from the opponent's line of sight. Then he called out, "Leorio." Leorio instinctively turned toward Reo. Reo raised his hand, gently blew on it, then glanced toward the thin man's candle. Leorio's eyes widened in realization. Without a second thought, he placed his own candle on the ground and dashed over to the prisoner. He exhaled forcefully. Fwoosh! The prisoner's candle went out. "I win," Leorio declared proudly. But the thin man smirked. "Hey, better check behind you first." Leorio turned around. And his heart dropped. His own candle had also gone out. Just then, the loudspeaker sounded. In the second match, victory goes to the prisoner. A replay of the moment played on the overhead screen. As Leorio ran off, a gust of wind had blown out his own candle, seconds before he extinguished the prisoner's. Damn it! Leorio punched his own leg in frustration and walked back to the group. "I'm sorry, guys. Reo even gave me the perfect hint. And I still messed it up." He trailed off, not finishing the sentence, but the others understood. Reo stepped forward. "Don't worry about it, Leorio. Win or lose, it's just one round. I'll take the next one." Leorio looked up and nodded. "We're counting on you, Reo. Go get him." Reo smiled faintly. "Yeah. Leave it to me." Without waiting to see who his opponent would be, Reo walked confidently toward the center of the ring. Chapter 40. When Reo stepped into the ring, a figure emerged from the prisoner's side. It was Bluff, the same man who had dragged away Bat earlier. As Bluff reached the center of the arena, everyone got a good look at him. His face looked like a failed patchwork of plastic surgery, stretched and misshapen. His muscles were over-exaggerated, grotesquely bulging, and most noticeably, he didn't even have a nose. "I've killed 19 people so far," Bluff said with a twisted grin. "But I hate that number. 19 bothers me. Today, I finally get to meet number 20. I don't care for games where you just mess around. I want blood. I want your guts. I want to see your pain." Before he could finish his monologue, Reo cut him off, his voice flat. "Hey, big guy. Skip the theatrics and choose a duel method. Personally, I'm thinking we go with whoever dies first loses. What do you say? You don't seem like the type to back down. You're not gonna beg for mercy, are you?" Bluff was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. "Ahahaha. I like you. All right, let's make it a deathmatch." Reo nodded and began stretching calmly in place. Suddenly, Bluff raised a finger. "Wait, I forgot to say something. This is a man's fight. No weapons. Hand to hand only." Reo didn't reply. He simply held out both empty hands in silence. Bluff noted this and thought to himself, he made it this far in the hunter exam without using a weapon? Interesting. Still, I've got a little secret weapon of my own. Hee. He cracked his knuckles, struck a pose, and charged forward. "Let me show you the real power of Uncle Bluff." He leapt high into the air, throwing a heavy punch downward. But Reo simply stepped lightly to the right and avoided it with ease. Crash! Bluff's punch landed hard on the arena floor, punching a crater into the surface. It was powerful, no doubt. As he stood back up, something slid down his back, a spider tattoo. Clearly intentional. Ha! Scared speechless already? He taunted. I'm one of the Phantom Troop's 4 heavenly kings. They call me Destruction King Bluff. That punch just now. That was just a greeting. Kurapika's eyes, from the edge of the arena, had turned blood red. Leorio noticed and instantly understood. That mark. A 12-legged spider tattoo, Kurapika growled. The symbol of the Phantom Troop. Gon's face turned serious. Aren't they the ones who? Leorio nodded grimly. They wiped out Kurapika's clan. They're a notorious criminal syndicate. And that guy. He's one of them. Meanwhile, Reo hadn't even glanced at Bluff. Instead, he looked toward Kurapika, noticing the blood-red glow in his eyes. Scarlet eyes. One of the 7 secret treasures of the world, he thought. Even more striking in person. Hey! You brat, Bluff yelled. Show some respect. I said I'm a heavenly king of the Phantom Troop. Reo, fed up, finally turned toward him. He had enough of the rambling. Without a word, Reo walked forward casually, almost lazily, closing the distance step by step. Bluff, seeing this calm approach, started to panic. He took a step back. Wait. Stop right there. I'm not finished talking. Hey. In a blur, Reo suddenly accelerated and threw a straight punch directly into Bluff's face. Thwack. It sounded like a watermelon bursting. Wait, did he just blow his head off in one punch? That's insane, cried a girl from the prisoner's side. Even Gon stood frozen. Our Reo. That was crazy. Leorio stared at the blood splatter and swallowed hard. He really did it. Just one punch. Reo stood calmly, his blood-streaked fists still clenched. Well, he wanted a bloody battle. I gave it to him. That's a win for us. Next. Without another word, Reo walked back toward his group, ignoring the blood dripping from his knuckles. Nice job, Killua said as Reo approached, surprising him slightly, since they'd barely exchanged 10 words since the start of the exam. Reo raised an eyebrow, but replied with a faint smile. Well. He clearly wasn't normal. You could smell it on him. Killua nodded, clearly impressed. Reo wasn't the talkative type, but when someone treated him with respect, he gave it back. Chapter 41. With Rio's victory, their side now had 2 wins and 1 loss. Just one more victory, and they could proceed to the next stage. But on the prisoner's side, no one seemed willing to retrieve Bluff's mangled body. Eventually, they simply ignored it and sent out their next fighter, a blonde man who, oddly enough, didn't even look like a criminal. Once his handcuffs automatically released, the man casually rolled his wrists. The bruises on his arms were clearly visible. As he made his way to the ring, he casually pressed his hand into the stone wall, scraping deep grooves along the surface with just his fingers. This guy's not ordinary, Reo thought, quietly observing. On their side, only Kurapika and Killua hadn't fought yet. But Kurapika, still shaken after seeing the fake spider tattoo on Bluff's back, remained withdrawn. So Killua stepped forward. I've got the 4th match. Doesn't look like anyone too impressive anyway. The blonde man reached the center of the ring. Leorio's eyes widened in shock. Wait. That guy. Gon looked at him curiously. Leorio, do you know him? Leorio didn't answer directly. Instead, he turned to Killua, face deadly serious. Killua, don't fight him. Let's just admit defeat. Killua raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Oh? So he's actually strong? Leorio nodded gravely. I read about him in the papers. His name's Johnny, and he's the most brutal killer in the history of Saba City. His victims had no connection, he murdered indiscriminately. Men, women, children. 146 confirmed victims. And not a single complete corpse, he added grimly. Every body was dismembered, each into at least 50 pieces. Johnny, now standing in the ring, seemed to have heard Leorio's warning. He reached toward the stone wall, crushed a chunk of rock in his bare hand, and let the sand fall through his fingers. "We don't need to throw you into this fight," Leorio pleaded. "There's always next year's exam. This guy's not worth the risk." But Killua ignored him, striding confidently toward the ring. "Don't stop me. It's been a while since something interesting showed up. This match is mine." Leorio made to stop him, but Gon stepped in his way. "We have to trust Killua. He can handle it." Leorio hesitated, then sighed and stepped back. Soon, Killua and Johnny faced each other in the center of the ring. "So?" Killua asked casually. "What's the win condition?" Johnny tilted his head, eyes empty of emotion. "Win condition? There's no such thing. This is one-sided slaughter. I'm not here for pardons or to pass exams. I'm just here to feel the thrill of ripping flesh with my own hands. All you need to do," he added with a grin, "is scream." The spectators outside the ring tensed. Kurapika tried to speak. "Killua, don't." But before the words finished, Johnny took a step forward, and then froze. Killua, who had been standing in front of him just seconds ago, was now behind him, silent, still, holding something. Johnny's body trembled. Give it back. Give it back." Killua turned around slowly. That's... Leorio gasped. In Killua's hand pulsed a dark red object. Johnny's heart. Killua had ripped it out the instant he passed by. Before Johnny could even process what had happened, he collapsed lifelessly to the floor. 3 wins, 1 loss. "We're done here, Baldy," Killua said, glancing at the prisoner who had acted as referee since Gon's match. The bald man blinked, stunned for a moment before replying. "Why yeah. You pass. This room's trial is complete. You may proceed." Killua returned to the group, hands in his pockets. Leorio and Kurapika were still speechless. "What is he?" Leorio muttered. Gon smiled and casually explained, "Oh, did I forget to mention? Killua was the heir to a famous assassination family." Reo, still thinking back on Killua's attack, narrowed his eyes. "That kid is seriously dangerous. If I ever end up fighting him, it'd be a draw at best. And that's only if I'm lucky. Who knows what other assassination techniques he's hiding." Meanwhile, Killua rejoined them in the tunnel. Seeing everyone still frozen in place, he waved dismissively. "Hey, enough staring. Let's go already." Chapter 42. At that moment, a gate suddenly opened along the wall beside the arena. A familiar stone slab extended outward, just like the one they had crossed before. The group moved forward onto the slab and continued on. As they walked, Kurapika turned to Killua and asked, "How did you do that just now? You took that murderer's heart out in an instant." Killua blinked, then shrugged. "It's not a special move or anything. I just control my body really well." To demonstrate, he raised one hand, and suddenly, one of his fingers extended into a long, sharp nail. Veins popped along his arm as the transformation occurred. "In fact, my dad is way better at this. He can remove someone's heart without spilling a single drop of blood." While Killua explained, Rio's mind drifted elsewhere, back to the moment he killed Bluff. When Bluff died, the contractor's notes had automatically appeared in Rio's hand, and Bluff's soul manifested as a faint, illusory portrait on the 6th page. Reo knew this meant the soul was awaiting his decision to finalize the contract. Since awakening the contractor's notes, Reo had expected that killing humans might invoke its power. So he wasn't surprised when Bluff's spirit showed up. But when Bluff's ability appeared in Rio's mind, Reo nearly cursed aloud. The guy had exactly one skill. And it was useless. All Bluff's ability did was increase his appetite. That's it. He could eat more rice. Reo scoffed at the memory. He didn't bother signing that ability into the notes, it was pure trash. So, he let Bluff's soul go free. That guy should honestly be grateful he was so weak, Reo thought. At present, Reo had forcibly signed contracts with 5 souls. Rabbit boosted his agility. Fish granted him the ability to breathe underwater. Ant enhanced his resistance to pressure. Horse greatly improved his stamina. Ape increased his raw strength. Back in his original world, Reo had above-average physical ability, but it was nothing compared to what was required in this world. If not for the contractor's notes, he'd probably be on Kurapika's level at best. His plan moving forward was simple: keep using the notes to strengthen his body until it could match even the strongest Nen users. Hey! Reo! Don't zone out, you're about to walk into a wall. Gon's voice snapped him back to reality. Reo looked up just in time to see he was about an arm's length away from colliding with the wall. Ah, thanks, Gon. I got caught up thinking about something. No problem, Gon said with a smile. Hey, when you get that weapon from the association, let me try it out sometime, okay? Reo chuckled. He understood Gon's childlike enthusiasm and didn't mind the request. Soon after, the group came to another door. Written on it were simple instructions: press circle to open. Press X to decline. Naturally, they all pressed circle. Ka-chunk. The door opened, revealing a room lined with weapons covering the walls, everything from ancient swords to modern firearms. Whoa. This is insane, Leorio muttered. Looks like they've got every weapon in history here. Reo looked around, instantly recognizing the room from the original storyline. Guys! There's a message here. Gon suddenly called out. Reo walked over to him and looked at the display. Gon read it aloud. This is the final point of disagreement. Are you mentally prepared? Circle or X? Reo rolled his eyes. What kind of question is that? Obviously, we're going to press circle. Why even ask? Leorio grumbled. Mentally prepared? What a joke. Of course we're ready. As soon as he spoke, the statue of a woman at the front of the room lit up. A small light shone from her forehead, and a familiar voice echoed through the room. It was Reborn, the examiner. There are 2 paths ahead, he announced. One is a long and difficult road, which allows all 5 of you to proceed together. The other is a short and easy path, but only 3 people can go through it. To choose the long road, press circle. To choose the short road, press X. If you choose the short road, you must handcuff 2 people using the cuffs on the wall. They will be detained here until the time limit ends. And for reference, pressing circle will take at least 45 hours to reach the goal. Choosing X will allow 3 of you to reach the finish line in just 3 minutes. Reo already knew how this would go, he'd seen it in the original. But he stayed quiet, curious how the others would respond. Kurapika glanced at the group. We have 60 hours left. Logically, we should take the long path and press circle. Without hesitation, Gon smiled and pressed circle on his wrist device. Leorio and Killua blinked in surprise, then smiled as well and followed suit. Kurapika looked to Reo. Reo shrugged and said, "Circle for me too." With all 5 votes cast, the long and difficult path began to open. Ka-chunk. The door creaked open. Gon and the others started forward, until Reo suddenly stopped them. Wait. Don't go yet. The others turned, confused. Reo ignored them and called out toward the statue. Examiner Reborn, I have a question for you. Hey hunters. Just a quick break. Hopefully you're enjoying this fanfic. Let's keep going. Chapter 43. Meanwhile, sitting in front of the surveillance monitors, Reborn hadn't expected a candidate to call out with a question. The amused smirk at the corner of his mouth widened as he replied. Candidate number 406, Reo, was it? If you have a question, go ahead. Reo nodded, remembering how it went in the original series and deciding it was worth confirming. The objective of this trial is simply to reach the bottom of the tower, correct? It doesn't matter how we get there, as long as we succeed, the method doesn't matter. Rietber raised an eyebrow, surprised by such a basic question. Of course. The goal of this stage is to reach the bottom of the tower. The method is up to you, as long as you succeed, it's valid. Reo smiled. Perfect. Thank you, dear examiner. That answers my question. Rietber, watching from the monitor, had no idea what Reo was planning, but simply nodded and continued the protocol. Very well. Since your concern is resolved, please proceed with the trial. As the intercom cut off, Reo waved his hand to gather the 4 others, who looked puzzled. I've got a way we can reach the bottom of the tower in just a few hours. Interested? Leorio perked up immediately. What? You had something like that and didn't say it earlier? I've been stressing for nothing. Reo pushed Leorio off his shoulder with a smirk. I just thought of it. Here's the deal, we take the long route as planned, but we carve through the entrance with the weapons in this room. Once we've made a hole, we slide over into the short, easy route. It's risky, yeah, but manageable. He figured the others would catch on from there. He was wrong. Leorio and Gon looked completely blank. Risky? Then forget it, Leorio grumbled. Let's just go the normal way. We've still got plenty of time. Gon rubbed his head. Yeah, we should just stick to the plan. Killua groaned and smacked Gon lightly on the head. Reo already solved the risky part, dummy. Use your brain. But Gon and Leorio still looked confused. Kurapika sighed. Didn't you hear Reo ask the examiner that question earlier? What do you think that was about? What do you mean? Leorio blinked. A stress vein twitched on Kurapika's forehead. Reo chuckled. These two really were the comic relief of the group. Killua, meanwhile, was busy selecting weapons from the room. A little while later, Reo inspected the 5 axes they'd chosen. They weren't anything fancy, but they'd do the job. 5 hours passed. Reo and the others had hacked their way through the thick stone barrier, creating a clean opening. Then, they slipped over into the short path and began the descent to the bottom of the tower. Back in the control room, Riker crushed the chocolate bar in his mouth. His expression darkened. Watching from the side, 2 of his assistants glanced nervously at each other. Boss, should we report them to the Hunter Review Committee? Yeah, that's cheating, isn't it? Riker glared at them. Shut up. They didn't break any rules. Understand? This case is closed. Now go monitor the other candidates. The 2 assistants gulped and scurried off, saying nothing more. Back to Rio's group. In just 3 minutes, they arrived at the final chamber. Whoa. Slow down. We're gonna crash, Leorio yelled as the world sped past in a blur. They had discovered that the short path was a sloped tunnel. To safely descend, Killua had offered up his skateboard, allowing them to slide through with control. In the end, Reo sat on top of a panicking Leorio all the way down. Once they reached the bottom, Reo stood up and surveyed the area. There were already 3 people there. Ding. 4th place, number 405, Gon, 1423. 5th place, number 99, Killua, 1423. 6th place, number 406, Reo, 1423. 7th place, number 404, Kurapika, 1423. 8th place, number 403, Leorio, 1423. Whoa, 3 people beat us here. Leorio gawked. Who the heck's that fast? He turned to look, and immediately froze. One of them was Hisoka, casually sitting on the floor, playing with a stack of cards. At the group's sudden arrival, his tower of cards collapsed. He looked up and smiled with his trademark eerie laugh. Oh hey. The second was Jotaro Kuro, the man with fingernails like knives. He leaned against the wall and slowly turned toward them with a mechanical clicking sound. Click, click, click. The last was Hanzo, who was doing push-ups in the corner. He looked up at them, his shiny head catching the light. Leorio squinted and immediately looked away. Why yeah. I think I'll stay quiet now, he muttered. Meanwhile, exhaustion hit them all like a truck. After nearly 15 hours with no rest, the moment they reached the tower's base, their bodies gave out. Reo led them to a quiet corner where they could rest and recharge. He didn't even react to the creepy way Hisako was staring at him. But just as they began to relax. Gurgle. Ugh. I'm starving now that we're done. Gon clutched his stomach. Killua nodded. Same. I already ate all the chocolate the association gave me. Reo thought for a moment, then remembered the bread he had bought earlier. He reached into his coat and pulled out a loaf of bread. Then another. And another. In total, he pulled out 6 loaves of bread and placed them on the ground. Whoa. Reo, you're amazing. You actually packed snacks. You're the best. Gon cheered as he lunged for the food. Chapter 44. After Reo and the others cleared the third trial, they ate a quick meal and settled down to rest. There were still nearly 60 hours left before the round officially ended. But resting for 60 hours straight wasn't realistic. After about 10 hours, boredom set in, hard. Ugh. Somebody do something, I'm going crazy. Leorio sat against the wall with his head in his hands, practically shouting at the ceiling. It was no surprise. Among the group, Leorio was the most restless. Being stuck in one place for so long was practically torture for him. If you're that bored, why not go play cards with Hisako? He's been at it with Jitarakuru for a while now, Kurapika replied from his corner, where he was leaning calmly against the wall. PFFT. If I could match them, I would have been over there hours ago instead of whining here. Right, Gon? Killua? Leorio shot back, dragging the two into his tantrum. Killua shrugged, entirely unbothered. I've sat through way worse. This is nothing. Same. Back on Whale Island, I used to sit for hours waiting for a fish to bite, Gon added cheerfully. TCH. Traitors. Reo, you say something too. Leorio turned, hoping to find some backup. Reo, who had been pretending to nap, reluctantly opened his eyes at the sound of his name. I think there's a solution. Why not ask the examiner if we can pass the time somehow? After all, they've already been considerate enough to send food down here. Honestly, Reo had expected there to be no supplies at the base of the tower. But to his surprise, the examiner had planned ahead and sent provisions in advance. Still, he thought, if we'd gone the regular route like in the original story, we could have relaxed in a cozy little building instead. Beds, meals, warm lighting. A lot more comfortable than this stone pit. But it was too late for regrets. While the group continued chatting, or arguing, time passed slowly. Before they knew it, 47 hours had gone by. Everyone gathered in front of the hall's timer. Only 10 minutes remained. Excitement filled the air. After being cooped up for so long, the thought of finally getting out was enough to lift everyone's spirits. 10 minutes later. Ding. The third trial has ended. A total of 38 candidates have passed. A loudspeaker announced the results. At the same time, the stone gate in the chamber began to rise with a clunk. Everyone turned toward it and walked out into the light. Ah, sunshine. Gon threw his arms wide, his eyes closed, face tilted up toward the sky. The view that greeted them was glorious: bright blue skies, wispy clouds, golden sunlight, and a fresh breeze that swept over their skin like a warm welcome. It was the first time in a long while that anyone had felt so relaxed. But just as they were soaking in the freedom, a voice interrupted. They turned toward the source, and saw a strange man standing nearby, smiling with his hands behind his back. He had beady, scheming eyes and a cartoonishly tall crown of hair. Everything about him radiated trouble. "Dear candidates, congratulations on escaping the trap tower," he announced, sounding overly chipper. "I'm Reekber, head of the Penal Institute and also a bounty hunter. I'll now escort you to the next testing site." He snapped his fingers, and an airship nearby activated, rising smoothly into view. Leorio groaned. "Already? They're flying us to the next exam this fast?" Gon, on the other hand, was delighted. "Nice. I get to ride an airship again. This is only my second time." Leorio gave him a sidelong glance. "Seriously, Gon? It's just an airship." Reo stood nearby, smiling faintly. Listening to their banter, he couldn't help feeling grateful. In the middle of this chaotic and high-stakes exam, he found people who genuinely made things more fun. Soon, the group boarded the airship in an orderly line. Reo found himself standing by one of the windows, watching the view slowly shrink beneath them. That's when he felt someone step up behind him. He turned. To his surprise, it was Lena. She smiled. "What, surprised I passed the third trial?" she asked, amused. "You didn't think I had it in me?" Reo quickly raised his hands. No. It's not like that. I just didn't expect you to be right behind me. I thought it was Gon or Killua." Lena chuckled. She stepped closer, took off her hood, and looked him straight in the eyes. Is that so?" Her pale green eyes sparkled as she leaned forward. Reo stiffened a little. "Why am I suddenly nervous?" But before the moment could get too intense, Lena laughed, a bright, silverbell kind of laugh that echoed through the cabin. "Ha ha. I was just messing with you. Didn't expect you to get so flustered." Reo blinked and stared at her, heart skipping for a second. She really had a way of catching him off guard. And, just for a moment, Reo felt a little spark. Chapter 45. "Ah. Reo. You're here, we've been looking for you." "Yo. Hello," Lena Gon's cheerful voice rang out from a distance, snapping Reo out of the daze he had slipped into. "Oh, Gon. I'm here. What's up?" "I'll come over now," Reo responded quickly. He turned to Lena and gave her an apologetic smile. "Sorry about that, looks like they need me over there. Let's chat again later, okay?" Without waiting for a reply, Reo took off toward Gon, not noticing Lena's expression as she watched him go. She stared after him silently, saying nothing. "Thanks, Gon. You really saved me back there, I didn't know what to do." Reo gave him a grateful look. But Gon blinked, puzzled. "Huh? I helped you? When?" Reo scratched his head awkwardly. "Never mind. So, you said you needed me?" "Yeah. Let's head over to Kurapika first, we're talking about something important." Gon grabbed Rio's wrist and dragged him off. By the time they stopped, they were standing in front of Kurapika, with Killua and Leorio already there. "Reo, perfect timing. We were just discussing the next stage of the exam," Kurapika said seriously. Reo glanced around at the group and gave a slight nod. "All right. I'm listening." Kurapika took a breath. "We don't know what the next trial will involve, but the 5 of us have gone through the last 3 together. Like it or not, we've become a team. I propose that we continue working as a group, supporting each other through the rest of the exam. That way, we'll have the best chance of helping as many of us pass as possible and earn our licenses." The others turned to Reo, clearly waiting for his input. Reo raised an eyebrow, smirking. "So you guys already decided this before calling me over, huh? But really, do you even need to ask? We've been a team since the very first trial. Helping each other through this is only natural." Everyone blinked in surprise. Rio's words were simple, but sincere. Kurapika looked touched. "I knew it, I didn't misjudge you, Reo." "Well said." He stepped forward and extended his hand. The others immediately understood, and one by one, they placed their hands on top of his hunter exam. "Let's do this together!" They all shouted in unison, then burst out laughing at the sudden surge of camaraderie. Unnoticed by the group, the airship had begun to descend. As laughter and chatter filled the cabin, Gon pointed excitedly out the window. "Hey! Look, there's an island. Are we heading there?" Everyone turned to look. Gon was right, the airship was heading straight toward a small, oddly shaped island, and the clouds around them showed that they were slowly descending. "That's one strange-looking island. Kind of shaped like a crescent moon," Reo muttered. Hee, that's not so weird. You forgot I'm from Whale Island, didn't you?" Gon said with a grin. "Good point," Reo replied, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. But Kurapika narrowed his eyes and pressed closer to the window. "Wait. There are a lot of shipwrecks around that island. This area's dangerous." Reo squinted out the window and gasped. "You're right. Look at all those wrecks. This next trial might be more intense than we expected." But Gon pointed again. "Wait. I don't think we're landing on the island." Everyone followed his gaze, and saw a large warship, half-sunken and stuck into the shallows of a nearby islet. It looked like that was their true destination. Moments later, the airship began to hover over the warship and descend. "Ding! We have reached the end of this flight. Please exit the airship in an orderly fashion." The familiar voice from the speaker echoed through the cabin. Reo, Gon, Killua, Kurapika, and Reo disembarked with the other examinees and made their way toward the battered deck of the ancient-looking warship. Chapter 46. Everyone had just disembarked from the airship and gathered on the deck of the old warship. Kurapika looked around and speculated. "Is this the venue for the fourth test?" Gon, holding his fishing rod and wearing his usual little backpack, was full of excitement. "I wonder what we'll have to do this time." Just then, a strange groaning sound echoed from the side. Reo and Gon turned to see Reo slumped against the warship's railing, looking nauseous. "Ugh. I think I'm gonna puke." Killua, who was standing next to him, immediately stepped aside with a look of disgust. "Don't throw up here. That's disgusting." Reo groaned in regret, realizing he should have taken seasickness medicine. At that moment, two elderly figures stepped out from inside the ship, an old couple, judging from their affectionate posture. All the examinees, including Reo, instinctively turned their attention toward them. Reo raised an eyebrow curiously. "Are these two our next examiners?" Killua glanced over, then shrugged. "No. Based on their demeanor, they don't seem tense at all." The old woman stepped forward and introduced herself warmly. "Welcome, candidates. We're the owners of the only inn on this island. My name is Bana, and this is my husband, Gina." The old man gave a polite nod. "Pleased to meet you." Hanzo, standing among the examinees, stepped forward skeptically. "Wait a sec, when you say inn, you're not talking about the ship, are you?" Gina, adjusting his glasses, smiled. "Indeed we are. We've converted this warship into a fully functional hotel. This very ship once provided accommodation for King Nipola himself," Bana added with pride. "Even famous celebrities have stayed here and called it the Baya Palace on the sea." Hanzo frowned and cut them off. "Okay, enough with the fluff. Just admit it, you two are the examiners, right?" The old man chuckled and looked at his wife. "I'll let you take this one." She nodded, then addressed the group seriously. "You're right. We are the examiners for this stage. And now, I'll deliver a message from the Hunter Association. Congratulations, candidates. You've made it through the third trial. The fourth test will be held exactly 3 days from now. Until then, you are free to rest here as you please." At those words, visible relief spread across the candidates' faces. Many had gone through extreme difficulty reaching the bottom of the trap tower, unlike Rio's group, who'd found a shortcut. The idea of rest was a blessing. Some immediately made their way toward the ship to find rooms and collapse. Even Kurapika exhaled deeply. A few days of rest. We've earned it? Leorio visibly relaxed, stretching out his arms as he walked toward the ship. First thing I'm doing is taking a shower. But just before he stepped inside, the couple stopped him. Please wait. Before you enter, we must inform you of something important. Everyone paused, turning their attention back to the couple. We require a deposit of 10 million rings per guest stay at our inn. The entire crowd went silent. 10 million rings? Leorio stammered. We have to pay. Gon blinked, stunned. That amount is insane. Kurapika muttered, dumbfounded. Even Dongba, who had barely made a peep until now, chimed in. 10 million? That's more than what it'd cost to stay in a 6-star hotel for half a year. Gon, still a kid, obviously didn't have that kind of money. The other candidates stepped forward to argue with the couple. The old man sighed and shook his head. If you can't provide a deposit, I'm afraid we won't be able to let you stay. Leorio clenched his fists. Then forget it. Paying that much to sleep in this beat-up old ship. I'd rather camp outside. He turned to leave, hands shoved in his pockets. But Kurapika stopped him cold. Don't be rash. Think it through. We're on a tiny island. There's no water source. The sun's scorching. Even if we wait for rain, we won't last long without water. And if we're dehydrated, we won't have the strength to take on the next test. Leorio froze, the weight of the situation finally hitting him. Then what do we do? 10 million rings. I don't even have that in my dreams. The old man chuckled lightly. Well, if money is the problem, there's another option. Leorio perked up. There is? What is it? We also deal in antiques, the old man explained. This region is known for shipwrecks, and many sunken vessels still hold valuable treasures. If any of you can retrieve such items, we'll accept them as collateral. Based on the value of the treasure, we'll assign your room accordingly. The candidates murmured amongst themselves, realizing they had little choice. Reo furrowed his brow. These two were clearly exploiting the situation, but unfortunately, they were also the only option. After a brief exchange of glances, Reo quietly slipped away from the group, deciding to search for some salvageable treasure to use as his deposit. Chapter 47. After Reo left, he didn't bother with the floating ships on the surface of the sea. Instead, he headed for the sunken wrecks below. He knew that the surface ships had likely already been scavenged multiple times. The real treasure would be under the sea. More importantly, thanks to the underwater breathing ability Reo had obtained after defeating a fish on Whale Island, he could comfortably do what others couldn't. Reo reached a boat, stripped off his clothes to avoid discomfort from being soaked, and dove into the sea with a splash. Gloop gloop gloop. He swam with ease, like a fish in water. He aimed for the deeper waters, away from prying eyes. If someone saw what he was capable of, it could become problematic. Eventually, Reo discovered a small shipwreck, probably a merchant vessel. The outer surface was covered in algae, but the deck area remained accessible. He brushed the algae away from the cabin door, opened it, and slipped inside. From some old armor scattered about, Reo guessed the ship had some history. After searching a bit and finding nothing of value, he pressed on. Further inside, he reached a larger chamber with 4 big crates. His instincts told him this might be it. He opened the first one, empty, except for some dust and decay. A bust. He moved to the second crate. Inside were several ornate bottles that looked historical. Not bad, he'd take them. He placed the crate near the cabin entrance for retrieval later. The third crate lit up as he opened it, filled with silver coins. He wasn't sure of their precise value, but it was definitely worth something. Then came the fourth and final crate. Reo opened it, and was greeted by the sparkle of diamonds. A box full of them. Jackpot. Even just the diamonds could easily be worth billions of jenny. Adding the bottles and silver coins, it was an incredible haul. He sighed, if only he had a spatial storage ability, he could bring everything with him and never worry about money again. He gave the ship one last sweep for hidden treasures but found no more. It was a small vessel, after all. Reo looked at the 3 crates and wondered how to haul them all at once. Luckily, he spotted sail ropes and quickly lashed the crates together. Then he began the swim back. However, something was off. Earlier, he'd seen plenty of fish, but now, not a single sea creature was in sight. That couldn't be good. As he pondered this, something wrapped around his ankle, like a rope, yet invisible. Reo glanced down but saw nothing. Still, the sensation was unmistakable. Suddenly, the surrounding seawater churned, something was coming fast. Panicking, Reo let go of the crate rope and focused on his ankle. His fingers brushed against something slick, definitely wrapped around his leg. The churning grew stronger. Whatever it was right on top of him. Reo managed to untangle the slippery tendrils after a few loops and seconds of struggle, but it wasn't fast enough. The unseen threat arrived just as he freed himself. Thinking fast, Reo yanked the crate bundle in front of him, and instantly, the crates vanished, devoured by something invisible. The creature revealed itself, a hideous fish-like monster. Tumorous lumps covered its pink flesh, its mouth like a massive straw, and long, squirming tentacles trailed from its head. Finally able to see it, Reo struck. His enhanced movement underwater gave him the edge. In a blur, he appeared above the creature, arms charged with power, and unleashed a flurry of punches. Phantom-like images filled the water with each blow. The beast convulsed and sank. Reo grabbed the limp body and swam back to shore. 10 minutes later, he hauled the strange creature onto the beach. Its grotesque form was fully visible now, pink, fleshy, with bulging sarcomas and straw-like mouthparts. Its tentacles were likely what had snared his feet. Still shaken from the encounter, Reo didn't hesitate. He raised his hand like a blade and brought it down on the monster's head. Splurt. Pink blood sprayed across his face. He wiped it away indifferently. A familiar book appeared in his right hand, Contractor's Notes. The 6th page turned on its own, revealing the portrait of the creature. 2 new abilities flashed into Reo's mind. The first, a stealth talent, perfect invisibility underwater. The second, a spatial storage power. The creature had the ability to absorb dead objects into a storage space within its body. Reo's eyes lit up. It was like having a personal space backpack. Without hesitation, he chose the second ability. Instantly, he felt something change inside him, a hollow, pocket-like sensation. To test it, he touched the fish's corpse. It disappeared into his void space. A wide grin spread across his face. He'd lost the initial treasure, but this power more than made up for it. Reo dove back into the sea and resumed treasure hunting. This time, everything was easier. He found a shipwreck filled with gold and diamonds, absorbed it all into his new storage space, and swam back. Half an hour later, he returned to shore, got dressed, and headed for the warship hotel. Chapter 48. When Reo returned, everyone had already gathered treasures, and they were now on the deck of the warship having them appraised by the old couple. Currently being appraised was a tray of food brought by Pakal. If these dishes can energize all 12 dishes, they're definitely worth at least 900,000 rings. You qualify for a second-class room. The old couple evaluated Pakal's tray and came to this conclusion. Next, Gon and Killua stepped forward carrying a large box full of gems. The old man picked up one of the diamonds, examining it with awe, as if he'd discovered a national treasure. He let out a small gasp of wonder. Seeing this, Killua grinned smugly. Well? Just one look, and you can tell it's worth billions. But the old man calmly set the diamond down. It's worth around 10 million rings. Killua stiffened. What? So many diamonds and only 10 million? The old man replied with composure, because all the other gems were scratched and damaged by the diamonds. They're flawed and can't be sold unless repolished. The old lady chuckled softly. You two also qualify for second-class rooms. Gon crouched down gloomily. He'd thought the gems could have made Aunt Mito happy. Reo, watching Gon's dejected face, decided to save his surprise for last. Then Reo brought his own treasure to the old man for evaluation. Yo, take a look. I pulled this up from a sunken ship. Should be worth something. Reo laid out the gold items he found for appraisal. Oh, gold crafts from the long-lost Peluvian kingdom, destroyed over 300 years ago. Judging by the condition, these are premium pieces. Normally, they'd fetch 1 million rings, but since you brought so many, I'll give you 10 million rings for the lot. You qualify for a second-class room. Reo wasn't surprised. He hadn't brought out the diamonds he found, those were untouched, flawless, still nestled in a sunken wreck. They were too perfect to waste here. He accepted the room key from the old lady and headed toward Gon and the others. Just then, Kurapika stepped up with a single pendant to be appraised. He handed over a golden lizard pendant, and the old man's eyes widened. This is... Kurapika noticed the reaction. According to the legend of the Korta clan, this is a unique gold pendant said to possess divine properties, fire-resistant and waterproof. The old man inspected it from every angle. It's genuine. Gon leaned in excitedly. Is it super valuable? But the old man shook his head. By jewelry standards, not really. Kurapika didn't seem disappointed. I'm not trading this pendant for money, nor do I need a room. I simply hope the owner of this place might know something about where the ship that carried this sank. The old man smiled, a little apologetically. By the time we arrived on this island, that ship had already been resting underwater. I'm afraid I know nothing about the Korta clan's whereabouts. He gently pushed the pendant back to Kurapika. Still, I'll provide you with a room for free. Kurapika accepted the key and bowed in thanks. Reo, watching this, knew the pendant was likely the most precious item the couple had seen all day. But the old man believed the pendant belonged with Kurapika, not as currency, but as something sacred. He wasn't as greedy as he seemed. After that, everyone left the deck and headed to their rooms. Reo checked the number on his key, moving through the corridors until he reached his room. A double. Wonder who I'm sharing with? Well, I'll find out eventually. He entered and closed the door behind him, shrugging off his clothes. After treasure diving earlier, his body was still crusted with sea salt. A bath was exactly what he needed. Shh. The sound of running water filled the bathroom as Reo stood under the showerhead, enjoying a rare moment of peace. Chapter 49. In the middle of the night, after Reo and Lena finished sparring and bathing, they were already resting in bed. Reo had only been asleep for a short while when a sound woke him up. Did something happen? Lena, who had agreed to be woken up if anything happened, rubbed her eyes and sat up. The blanket slipped from her body, revealing her delicate form to Rio's gaze. It's okay, go back to sleep. I'll go check things out. Reo actually remembered what this was about. It should be the part where the old couple sneak away in the middle of the night aboard the Hunter Association's airship. The next phase of the exam would have the candidates figuring out a way to reach Zevil Island. However, before leaving, the couple had apparently left all the treasures behind. Thinking of this, Reo decided to make a move. When he arrived at the couple's room. Hey, looks like I scored big this time. Reo looked at the carefully cleaned and categorized treasures the couple had left behind and couldn't help but laugh. Just this haul alone made the Hunter exam worth it. He reached out, absorbed all the treasures into his void storage, then whistled and casually headed to the deck. After all, he had to at least make an appearance to avoid suspicion. By the time Reo arrived, most of the candidates had gathered on deck. Hanzo even showed up in just his underwear. What's going on? Leorio stood at the railing, staring at the airship vanishing into the sky, and asked the others. "TCH. Isn't it obvious? Those two old geezers ditched us," Hanzo growled. "Maybe this is the fourth phase of the exam," Gon said optimistically. "Maybe they just want to leave us here to fend for ourselves," grumbled Tunpa, who had surprisingly also passed the third phase and was currently standing on the deck. Reo hadn't forgotten how Tunpa had repeatedly tried to provoke him and had even cleared the cooking test by stealing the grape spider egg from his hands. Since Tunpa was still around, Reo decided to give him a few more days. After all, the next phase required collecting ID tags. He glanced at Tunpa one last time before turning back toward his room. When Reo opened the door, Lena was still sleeping soundly. Clearly, she was exhausted from their earlier battle, and her physical resilience had been pushed past its limit. Reo crept over to his bed quietly. The next morning, everyone remained on deck. Even Lena was back to her usual self, as humans in this world had much higher endurance than in Rio's previous life. Leorio, watching the sunrise, grumbled, "It's been 5 hours, and they're still not back." "Ugh, where can you find a hotel owner like that?" Tunpa chimed in, "Exactly. They took all our treasures in advance, what the hell is that about?" He didn't yet realize that all the treasures had been packed up and taken away by Reo. Kurapika, standing nearby with his arms crossed, offered a different perspective. "Actually, I don't think the hotel owners were just trying to make money off of us." Tunpa didn't like that answer. "We had to bring back valuables just to get a room. That's totally a money grab." "Exactly," Leorio agreed. Hanzo joined the conversation. "About those treasures, we went to check their room, and it's completely empty now. Looks like they moved everything in advance." Hearing this, Gon and Killua also began to feel something was off. "I told you, this could be part of the exam," Gon speculated. Reo cleared his throat. "Ahem. Since they're clearly gone and might not come back, maybe we should check the rest of the warship. Who knows, we might find something useful." Kurapika nodded. "Good idea. We're wasting time doing nothing. Let's investigate the ship and look for clues." The other candidates agreed and began to split up to search. Just then, Panzu returned from inside the ship, signaling for everyone to follow her. Reo and the others followed Panzu to a small room, where Paco was tinkering with a radio, likely the ship's communication room. "Is it broken?" Gon asked. Paco replied as he worked, "No, the device itself is fine." Panzu added, "But no matter what frequency we try, there's no signal." Reo, remembering what happened in the original timeline, offered a theory. "Maybe it's due to a magnetic interference zone. All those shipwrecks outside. It's likely connected." Paco paused, then nodded. "That makes sense. Could be why we can't pick up anything." Leorio frowned. "Wait, what does that mean?" Reo gave him a sidelong glance. "It means we can't contact the outside world at all. We're effectively stranded." The mood in the room grew heavy. Just then, Gon perked up. "Killua, did you hear that?" Killua looked confused. "What? No. Don't scare me like that." Gon scratched his head. "Weird. Thought I heard something." Seeing that the room had grown quiet again, Reo suggested they continue searching for clues elsewhere. Kurapika agreed, staying here was pointless. Before leaving, Hanzo asked Paco to keep working on the radio just in case they could get it to work later. Chapter 50. Everyone began searching the warship. An hour later, everyone gathered back on the deck to share what they had found. Leorio held up a box of compasses for everyone to see. As expected, we found compasses. But strangely, there are multiple sets. Hanzo stood nearby holding several measuring tools. Kurapika held up a piece of paper he had discovered. "I went through the control room and found this." He began explaining to the group. "Our current location is Gunkanjima, and this chart shows a route to Zevil Island. Some candidates nearby, hearing Kurapika's analysis, immediately declared it was another part of the exam and suggested setting out for Zevil Island right away. But Kurapika shut that down quickly. I'm afraid it's not that simple. While this map and the compasses tell us where Zevil Island is, we don't know how far it is, or how much food and water we'll need for the journey. That's a big problem. Reo stepped forward and pulled out a notebook he had found. Kurapika, I think I found a log that has the island's location recorded in it. He handed it over. Truthfully, Reo had considered keeping it to himself, but remembering the deadly storm mentioned in the original Hunter exam, he decided it was better to act early than risk a delay. This is it. Kurapika flipped through the notebook, his face lighting up. Zevil Island is much closer than I expected. According to this, a small sailboat could reach it in a day. But Reo quickly added, keep reading. I doubt you'll be smiling after you do. Kurapika's hands turned the pages. His eyes widened. The climate is going to change? His voice sharpened from the shock. What? Hanzo rushed over to look, then growled. Damn. The once-in-a-decade weather shift starts today. The other examinees looked at each other in disbelief. No way. You've got to be kidding. We signed up for the Hunter exam, not a suicide mission. Reo shook his head at their panic. Still, they had their uses. He raised his voice sharply. Enough. Everyone calm down. If we prepare properly, we can reach Zevil Island today. No one listened. With a heavy step, Reo jumped down, appearing instantly in front of the loudest complainer. Without hesitation, he grabbed the guy by the head and slammed it into the steel deck. Boom. A deep dent formed in the metal. I said don't panic. Don't make me repeat myself. Silence fell immediately. Kurapika turned to Reo. Do you have a plan? Reo nodded and explained. This warship is still usable. If we clean off the algae underneath and blast the stuck section with artillery, we can dislodge it by noon. After that, if we set sail immediately, the warship's speed should get us to Zevil Island before the storm hits. Gon and Killua perked up. Yeah. We were checking out the warship yesterday. It looked like it could still move. Kurapika closed his eyes, processed everything, and made a decision. All right. Let's start preparations now and aim to launch by noon. Hanzo agreed, and with both him and Kurapika taking charge, no one else had objections. Kurapika divided everyone into task groups. Strong swimmers would dive and clear algae. Mechanics would inspect and maintain the engines. Lena was assigned to operate the artillery and blast the rocky hold. Papu and Ponzu took on various smaller logistics tasks. By the afternoon, nearly everything was ready. All that remained was to blast away the last bit of rock trapping the hull. The sky was already darkening, and waves grew choppy. A storm was clearly coming. Kurapika picked up the ship's intercom. Attention, all crew. In 10 minutes, we'll fire the warship's main guns during the high tide, using the peak buoyancy to help break free. All cannons will fire at once toward the bow's 12 o'clock rocky obstruction. Afterward, the engines will engage at full power and reverse out of the cove. Stay at your posts. Begin countdown. Around the ship, everyone moved into action. The lowest bilge levels are stable. Water ballast normal. All turbines and boilers are active. Pressure at critical. Main engine started. Gun hydraulic circuits primed, awaiting fire. Even Dongba helped, climbing the mast to manage lights. 1 minute left. The tornado in the distance loomed ever closer. Kurapika gave the final command. Main guns, prepare to fire. Fire all 4 cannons. 3, 2, 1, fire. Lena pressed the trigger. Boom. 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 The warship trembled as shells exploded against the surrounding rock. Kurapika gave the next order without missing a beat. Recheck damage. Prepare second volley. Engines, full reverse in 40 seconds. The second volley was fired. Then the third. Boom. Finally, with a thunderous roar, the warship tore free from the rock. The propellers engaged, and the warship surged forward, heading towards Evil Island. By morning, they had reached the island safely. Above, a Hunters Association airship hovered. On board, the third phase examiner, Lieber, watched with admiration. Ha ha ha. These candidates are something else. The stage I prepared wasn't enough. 26 passed. Not bad at all.